Hello, I'm Langston, and I'm back on my channel, Military Election Forecasting. So I'm going to be talking about the very important, things that have happened this week and, how it kind of affects America going forward in politics. So the first thing I want to talk about, which is the most talked about, is obviously Trump being kicked off the ballot in Maine's second congressional district. So obviously Trump got kicked off the ballot in the state of Maine. He also got kicked out of this off the ballot in the state of Colorado roughly a couple weeks ago. But for Maine, that actually hurts him worse. Realistically, there's a huge chance the Supreme Court does overrule this decision, but Trump is more than likely going to win Maine's second congressional district. And this is a congressional district, even though it's only one electoral vote. This is one electoral vote Trump would not have access to if he's not on the ballot. You've heard a lot of people make the argument, oh, if Trump wins Georgia, if he wins Pennsylvania, that means he'll be able to win the presidency, assuming that he holds on in Texas and North Carolina. But if he does not win Maine's second district, he cannot win a presidency despite winning Georgia and Pennsylvania. I do want to say that it is very unlikely that Trump will win Pennsylvania and not win Wisconsin. And probably not, not win Georgia as well. So I think if Trump wins Pennsylvania, there's like 0% chance that he doesn't win Wisconsin as well. Like I think he wins Wisconsin, by a little bit more than Pennsylvania. Obviously, Wisconsin is the most conservative of the three Rust Belt states. But regardless, if Trump just wins Georgia and Pennsylvania, like he cannot win if he does not win Maine second district. It would have to go up to the House and the Senate, and they'd have to choose a presidency, which Trump would be favored to win. But regardless, that's just such a much more difficult path rather than outright if he does not win Maine second district. If you get what I'm trying to say. So yeah, now I want to move on to you know, some more topics because obviously when talking about, Colorado, Maine, it's very curious to see what the Supreme Court does because if the Supreme Court does not make it a decision, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, all of these states have Supreme Courts that are, controlled by Democrats. Like they can easily, pass a law saying, hey, Trump can't be on the ballot. Personally, I'm not going to sit up and say I agree with the decision. I do understand where they're coming from their logic. Like, obviously, with some of the decisions Trump made, I understand why they want to keep him off the ballot. At the end of the day, I'm not going to sit up and say personally, I have some kind of opinion on it. Personally, I do see in a way why it's kind of undemocratic. But at the end of the day, you are running up against a candidate that has historically, said that, hey, he feels like the election's being stolen from him. Like, he's came up with conspiracy theories that have not been proven factual. So, to be honest, you can't be mad at them for playing the same game as Donald Trump. But I do not agree with either side playing that game in terms of, coming up with, ways to cheat democracy, if you get what I'm saying. So now I want to move on to the Green Party in Arizona. I feel like this is actually even more influential. The Green Party got on the ballot in Arizona. In 2020, Arizona was one of the closest states in 2020. Um, Trump won Arizona. I mean, Biden won Arizona very narrowly, but only by roughly 0.3%. So, Arizona has been a state where has been pretty competitive in the past. Cannot get that to load up. And, with that, that is a realistic problem for, Democrats. I do want to say Arizona has been trending to the left as of recently, and that will definitely help Democrats across the state, in states like Arizona because of how, left trending, in particular Maricopa County is, as well as Pima County. But again, yes, mathematically it might nearly help them, but the truth is, like I mentioned this with, in the Senate elections, Kristen Sinema doesn't really hurt Democrats because, the biggest problem Democrats have with Joe Biden is because they don't think Joe Biden's left wing enough. They don't think he's doing enough for Black issues, enough for LGBT issues, enough for student loan cancellation, as well as taking up the Palestinian cause. And the Green Party does give, more left wing political views. So the base of the Democratic Party support in Arizona will be a lot more open to voting for a left wing candidate than a center right candidate. And that does hurt Joe Biden. I do think a lot of the moderate suburban voters in the Phoenix area will be enough to save Joe Biden. But this does give Donald Trump a much more substantial chance at winning Arizona because of the Green Party being on the ballot. But in return, Democrats will probably try to get the Libertarian on the ballots, which will take away a lot of moderate voters, a lot of the moderate Republican vote. So you'll probably see them both fighting for the same game. The last thing I want to talk about is Nikki Haley, and her very controversial comment about why slavery was not the cause of the Civil War. This is not too shocking for a Republican, but Nikki Haley has tried to brand herself as a moderate when during her time as governor of South Carolina. This is during the Dylan Roof shooting in Charleston, where the white supremacists they killed numerous black people in a church. She took down a Confederate flag in South Carolina. She kind of distanced herself from that brand. But as of now, she said a very controversial thing, and that has very huge electoral impacts for her. And I wanted to talk, in my last previous video, I talked about the fact that I thought that Nikki Haley was overestimated. I did a video about that. I'll leave the link in the description if you guys want to sit up here and watch it. Because I think I did a really good job explaining why I think she's overrated. I think she's a very weak candidate for working class and rural voters in the Rust Belt. I don't think that she is going to stop the suburbs from trending left. The suburbs have been trending left way before Donald Trump. They were trending left prior to Donald Trump. They got more liberal from 2004 to 2012. So why would they stop doing so? Like they were going to continue trending left regardless of Donald Trump. They might not have trended as dramatically, but I don't realistically think Nikki Haley can stop that. We saw candidates similar to her run in particular in Colorado with Joe O'Dea. Someone who's more liberal than Nikki Haley. At the end of the day, we've seen a lot of liberal Republicans run in federal races and still do bad in the suburbs. Like, for example, an incumbent, Jerry Moran, he ended up losing Johnson County. He did lose it narrowly, but Trump won his county back in 2016 and he was the incumbent. So at the end of the day, like you cannot see, like you see that these counties are trending to the left regardless of the circumstances. So because of that, I realistically think Nikki Haley lacked the ability to approve of those voters anyway. And like I said, her failure to do well with rural when working class voters alone takes these three states off the map. I don't think that she would do I think she might do a little bit better than Trump in the wild counties, but she would lose all of that back in the driftless regions, like in the working class parts of Wisconsin. I think that, similar thing in Michigan as well. I don't think she can realistically win, obviously. In Pennsylvania, I think that, we saw this year in 2023 in the Supreme Court election where we saw a moderate Republican, Carla Coluccio. She did worse than Trump in the Philadelphia suburbs. Like she lost Chester by 18, Trump only lost by 17. She lost Montgomery by 32, Trump lost by, I want to say, 26. She lost Delaware by 24. Trump only lost by 22 or so. I want to say 23. She also lost Bucks by 10. Trump only lost Bucks by like 4 or 5. So, we seen moderate Republicans, still do bad in the suburbs. So realistically, I don't see any evidence that Nikki Haley would do better in the suburbs than Donald Trump. In Nevada, I think that, she's a very weak candidate for turning out rural voters with more Hispanic voters turning out, that would really hurt her in Nevada. And you hear this argument from Republicans. Oh, and even some Democrats where, Nikki Haley, she's a person of color. People of color be more interested in voting for her, which is the biggest lie. Because, no black person looks at an Indian American and sees representation in them. Like, I don't think that black people see Indian Americans as, oh, this is a fellow minority. Like they don't realistically see that. They just see her as someone that's not part of their community. Like this whole people of color classification that you oftentimes see people, in election prediction forecasting make. Like, I don't know if you think Hispanic voters see Nikki Haley as representation. They might see Catherine Cortez Masto's representation. Black voters might see Obama or Raphael Warnock or Kamala Harris as their representation, but they don't see Black Americans as their representation. And people of color, by and large, look down on people of color conservatives anyway, whether that's Hispanic conservatives, Black conservatives, or etc. So again, they're not going to vote for a conservative of their own racial demographic, let alone one from another one. So many red flags. You've heard people say she's a strong candidate in the Sun Belt, which I really disagree with. I don't think that she's capable of stopping the suburbs from turning left. I think that her controversial comments about slavery, as of now, will really hurt her in states like Georgia and North Carolina with Black voters, in particular. I always think, I think Arizona might be too far gone for Republicans at this point to realistically have too much of a chance. And Texas is going to continue turning left regardless. As we saw with Greg Abbott, who underperformed his 2018 numbers, which was a blue wave year, D+8 environment versus the R+3 environment, he still did worse in 2022 relative to that environment. So realistically, I don't see Nikki Haley as a strong candidate. Like I think Republicans have dug themselves in a hole because of demographics. America's becoming a lot more Hispanic and Asian American, a lot more educated. These are all demographics that do not vote Republican. And there's nothing Republicans can really do to stop that. Only thing they can do is, like Donald Trump, maximize rural turnout, maximize working class turnout, and hope that those demographics don't turn out to give them narrow victories where they can win via a plurality like Donald Trump did in 2016. But they cannot win fair head on head matchup, regardless of Democratic candidate, just because of that. So realistically, I don't see Nikki Haley as a better alternative. This is going to really, really drag her down. We saw, the comments that Ron DeSantis made earlier, where he said, black people benefited from slavery. That really drug down his poll numbers. Ever since he made those comments, a lot of Republicans came out in opposition against him, primarily because they were afraid of, him potentially being a nominee, him motivating more black people to turn out in the Rust Belt, in Georgia, in North Carolina, which would in turn hurt Republicans electorally, as well in the Senate and in House races. But you get what I'm trying to say. Like, this is gonna really hurt Nikki Haley's brand. Like, people would never forget this comment, especially black voters. Black people are still talking about stuff that Donald Trump said, 30 years ago. Like, they're not gonna forget that Nikki Haley said something like this. So this is a really big problem for her, even in the future, because they're gonna bring this shit up. It can be 10 years from now. They're gonna continue to bring this up. They don't forget. They don't forget about the things Joe Biden did. They didn't forget about the things Donald Trump. They didn't forget about the Central Park Five. They didn't forget about Donald Trump and his housing discrimination. They didn't forget about numerous other things. They're not going to forget about this. So again, this is a really big taint in Nikki Haley's political career, and I kind of wanted to cover it. So those are the three major things I talked about: the Green Party getting on the ballot in Arizona, which I think is the most important; Nikki Haley's very controversial comments, as well as Maine banning Donald Trump being on the ballot, as well as Colorado. With that, that could really help Democrats as well, um, in a lot of these races, assuming that nothing changes. Democrats would start with 227 instead of 226, which doesn't really help too much, but one electoral vote still makes it still helps more than not having it at all. So that's realistically all I want to talk about in this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. Please have a nice day, you guys. Goodbye.